It started when I moved back home after finishing my final semester. I didn't have a job lined up yet, and my dad offered to let me stay at his place for a bit to get on my feet. I figured it'd be temporary, just a couple months max. I didn't expect it to turn into something else. My dad had remarried about 2 years earlier. I hadn't lived with them since, so I never really got to know his new wife. I always thought she was too young for him. She was only 10 years older than me, maybe less. My dad's in his mid-50s and well, she looked more like someone I'd run into on campus than someone I'd call family. She was always polite, friendly. But there was something about the way she carried herself that made it hard not to look confident, relaxed, comfortable in her skin. She wasn't flashy, but every little thing she did, tying her hair up in the kitchen, walking barefoot around the house, even laughing at dumb TV shows, drew attention without trying. It was subtle, and that made it worse. At first, I brushed it off. She was attractive, sure, but she was my dad's wife. Off limits. I told myself I was just noticing things because I wasn't used to being around a woman in the house. That didn't last. It started with small interactions. Casual stuff. She'd say, "You clean up nice," after I showered, or ask if I was working out more. One morning, I came downstairs shirtless and she said, "Your dad never had those abs." She laughed like it was a harmless joke, but the way her eyes lingered said more than the words. There were other moments. I caught her watching me once when I was mowing the lawn. She was on the patio, sipping iced tea, sunglasses on, but I could feel her eyes. She didn't look away when I glanced over. She just smirked like she knew exactly what she was doing. We had a rhythm. My dad was working late a lot. She and I would eat together sometimes, just the two of us. We'd talk about everything: music, travel, stupid reality shows. She liked asking personal questions. She wanted to know about my dating life, if I had anyone serious, what kind of girls I liked. I kept it light, but she pushed deeper. Not in a weird way, more like interested, engaged. Her tone never crossed the line, but her eyes did. One night after dinner, she poured us both a glass of wine. We sat on the couch and kept talking. She was wearing a loose shirt that kept slipping off one shoulder, and I was trying hard not to notice. But she leaned in closer with every laugh, every question. Her perfume was soft, something floral I couldn't place, but once you smelled it, it stuck with you. She touched my arm when she laughed, kept her hand there a little longer than needed. At one point, she rested it on my knee. I don't remember the exact joke. I just remember her hand and the way my body reacted to it. She didn't move it right away, and neither did I. It was like walking a tightrope. Nothing technically inappropriate had happened, but every word, every gesture, felt like it carried weight. Like we were both pretending it was innocent while knowing it wasn't. I started to feel guilty. Not because I'd done anything, but because I wanted something to happen. I caught myself thinking about her at night. More than once. One afternoon, I came back from a run. Sweaty, shirt clinging to my skin. She was in the kitchen, and I went to grab water. She looked me up and down and said, "You're really filling out, huh?" I laughed it off, but she didn't. She walked over, put her hand on my chest, said, "All that hard work's paying off." I froze. She didn't say anything else. Just patted me like it was nothing, and went back to whatever she was doing. But I stood there, heart pounding, feeling like something had shifted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it. Her voice. Her hand. The way she looked at me. It wasn't just flirtation. It felt deliberate. Like she wanted me to know she noticed. Like she wanted to see how I'd react. I tried avoiding her the next day. Stayed in my room, skipped dinner. She knocked around 9, asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. She paused, then said, "Let me know if you need anything." Her voice was low, gentle. Like she meant more than just food or help. A few days later, we were both home while my dad was away on a weekend business trip. I figured I'd spend most of the time out of the house, maybe crash at a friend's. But she asked if I could help her move some boxes from the garage to the attic. I agreed. It was normal enough. We worked together for about an hour, sweating in the heat, lifting heavy stuff, laughing over old junk my dad kept. When we finished, she asked if I wanted a drink. I followed her into the kitchen. She poured us lemonade and leaned against the counter, hair stuck to her neck, cheeks flushed. She looked tired but radiant. I couldn't stop staring. She caught me, smiled, said, "You've been looking at me a lot lately." I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. She stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth off her skin. She said, "I noticed things, too." I didn't move. I didn't speak. She just looked up at me and waited. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't confusion. It was intentional. A door opening. Then she walked away. Just like that. Like she knew I wouldn't forget. And I didn't. Everything felt different after that. She didn't act like anything had changed, but she didn't need to. Her eyes told the story. Every time we passed each other in the hallway. Every time we sat across the table. Every time she smiled like she had a secret. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not just her body or her looks, but the way she made me feel. Seen. Desired. Like I was part of something dangerous. Something forbidden. And it thrilled me. At the same time, the guilt started creeping in. I wasn't just living in my dad's house. I was staring at his wife like she belonged to me. Every time she laughed at my jokes or touched my arm, it felt like a betrayal. But I didn't stop. I didn't want to. The worst part? I started hoping he'd stay late. That she and I would be alone again. That she'd open that door one more time. And this time, maybe she wouldn't walk away. The tension didn't fade, it grew. Every day felt like a question waiting for an answer. She didn't flirt openly, but she didn't have to. Her presence alone was enough to keep me on edge. The way she looked at me lingered longer. Her voice was softer. There was a rhythm to it now, like we were dancing around a line neither of us was willing to draw. One afternoon, she asked me to help her figure out some tech issue with the TV. I sat beside her on the couch, and our legs touched. She didn't move. Neither did I. She leaned in as I explained things, and I could feel her breath on my neck. When I handed her the remote, our fingers touched. Hers stayed there, light and unhurried. She said, "You always smell nice," and turned back to the screen. No smile, just a statement. I started to crave these moments. Craved her attention. Craved the way she made me feel like I mattered in a way that had nothing to do with being my father's son. She made me feel seen. More than that, chosen. And that need to be chosen was dangerous. One night, she knocked on my door. She had a glass of wine in her hand and asked if I wanted to join her. I hesitated, then followed her downstairs. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. Silence stretched between us. She finally said, "I miss feeling close to someone." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The silence felt heavy, real. She looked over at me and added, "You're easy to be around." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. She moved a little closer, tucking her legs under her, glass balanced in one hand. Then, out of nowhere, she asked if I'd ever been in love. I gave some vague answer, but she pressed, wanting more. I told her about a girl who ghosted me last year. She listened, really listened. When I was done, she said, she was an idiot. The way she looked at me then, there was no mistaking it anymore. She touched my arm again, gently. Just a few fingers. Nothing dramatic. But it lingered. And then she pulled back like she realized what she was doing. I said nothing. I didn't trust myself to. From that point on, everything was unsaid but understood. She'd pause when walking past me, glance at me when we were in a room with my dad, say things that had layers. The casual was no longer casual. It was a code. I knew what she was doing, and she knew I knew. Another night, I was heading upstairs when she stepped out of the bathroom in a towel. Her hair was wet, skin glowing from the heat. She didn't flinch or rush. She just smiled and said, "Didn't expect to see you." My voice cracked when I replied. She didn't tease. She just looked at me a second longer than she needed to and walked into her room, door slightly open. I told myself to stop, that it had gone too far already. But I didn't want to stop. I wanted her to keep pushing it. And she did. We started texting. Stupid things. Jokes, memes, things that had nothing to do with anything. But it was all foreplay, even when it wasn't. One message just said, "You looked good today." That was it. I stared at it for 5 minutes before replying. "You too." From there, it picked up. A compliment here. A question there. Then one night, she sent, "Ever think about me when I'm not around?" I didn't reply for hours. Then I wrote, "Yes." She didn't respond until the next morning. Me too. The line had vanished. She asked me to join her for a walk. We ended up at the edge of the neighborhood, sitting on a low fence. She said she felt stuck, that she and my dad weren't close anymore, that things had changed. I listened and nodded, unsure of what I was supposed to say. She asked if I thought she was a bad person. I said no. She said, "What if I am?" Then looked right at me, searching for something I couldn't name.
She didn't kiss me then.
But she didn't need to. After that, everything felt electric. Even passing her the salt at dinner had weight. She would look at me across the table, and I'd have to look down to stop myself from staring back. My dad remained oblivious. Or maybe he just didn't want to see it. The next time she texted, she said, "I think about what it would feel like to kiss you." I didn't hesitate this time. I said, "Me too." She replied with one word, "Dangerous." I started checking when he'd be home, watching their schedules, finding cracks in the routine. She did the same. One afternoon, she said, "You ever wonder what would happen if we stopped pretending?" I told her I thought about it all the time. She said, "Then stop pretending." Every time I saw her, I wondered if that would be the day it happened. And I knew it wasn't a matter of if anymore, just when. Then one morning, she asked if I wanted to stay for lunch. My dad had just left. I said sure. We sat close at the counter, closer than usual. She reached over to wipe something off my cheek. Her thumb stayed there a moment longer than necessary. Then she said, "I don't feel guilty anymore." I asked, "About what?" She said, "Wanting this." I didn't ask her to clarify. I didn't need her to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, waiting for something, anything. Around 1 a.m., she messaged, "Still awake?" I said yes. She replied, "Me too." Then nothing. 20 minutes passed. Then another message. "If you came downstairs right now, would you kiss me?" I stared at it, heart racing. I typed, "Yes." She replied, "Then do it." I got up, barely thinking, breathing shallow. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I paused. Everything felt unreal, like I was crossing into something I couldn't come back from. But I wanted it. I wanted her. And I knew she wanted me too. She was waiting, not speaking, eyes locked on mine. Nothing needed to be said anymore. The pretending was over. I didn't knock. I just opened the door and stepped inside. She was already walking toward me, slow, deliberate. There was no hesitation in her eyes. No nervous laugh. No pretense left. When she reached me, she didn't say anything. Her hands moved first, lightly, then firmly. I didn't resist. I couldn't. Everything we'd been holding back collapsed into that moment. We didn't speak. Not at first. Words didn't make sense. Everything felt unreal, like I was outside myself, watching it happen but unable to stop it. Her body against mine, warm and urgent, felt like something I'd imagined too many times to believe it was actually real. But it was. She kissed me like she'd been waiting months for it. There was no testing the waters. No soft beginning. Just heat. Hunger. Her fingers traced every part of me like she already knew the shape of my skin. Mine did the same. We weren't careful. We weren't slow. It was fast, reckless, desperate. It didn't feel like a first time. It felt like something overdue. Something that had lived in silence too long and finally broke free. I lost track of time. I didn't know where her skin ended and mine began. Every barrier we'd carefully maintained up until that point vanished. It didn't stop after one kiss, or 2, or 10. We didn't talk about my dad. We didn't talk about right or wrong. In those moments, there was only her and me and everything we hadn't said. We were both fully aware of what this was, what it meant, but that didn't stop either of us. If anything, it made us lean in harder. When it was over, we stayed close, breathing fast and quiet, her head on my shoulder. I was afraid to speak. Afraid if I did, the reality of it would shatter whatever spell we were under. But she looked up at me and said, "We can't take that back." I nodded. She added, "I don't want to." That should have made me feel something, guilt, fear, even pride. But I felt numb. Numb in a way that didn't dull anything, just amplified the wrongness of how right it all felt. I stayed with her longer than I should have. Left only when silence started to feel heavier than touch. The next day, everything was normal. Too normal. She made breakfast. I sat at the counter. We didn't talk about it. But the way she placed the coffee in front of me, the way her fingers brushed mine, told me it wasn't forgotten. It was branded into both of us now. My dad called that afternoon. Said he'd be back the next day. Hearing his voice felt like being snapped awake mid-dream. I answered like nothing was different, like I wasn't sitting 5 feet from the woman I'd just betrayed him with. When I hung up, she asked if I was okay. I said yes. I wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts wouldn't stop racing. Every memory of the night before twisted in my head. It hadn't been a mistake. That was the worst part. It had felt inevitable, like something we both let happen without trying to stop it. She texted me just before midnight. One word, awake. I didn't answer. I stared at the screen until the message disappeared behind the blackness of my locked phone. The guilt was finally catching up. But so was the craving. I told myself it couldn't happen again. That it would only get worse. That I needed to draw the line before we both lost control. But the truth was I didn't want to. I wanted her. I wanted the feeling. The risk. The way she looked at me like I was more than a mistake. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Her hair was tied up, sleeves rolled, moving around the kitchen like any other day. But when our eyes met, I saw it, something deeper than lust. Something dangerous. She wasn't just playing a game. She meant it.
We didn't touch again that day.
We didn't need to. The memory of last time was still fresh, still sitting between us like a shared secret too heavy to lift. I avoided being alone with her. She didn't push. That night, I laid awake wondering if she was doing the same. If she was thinking about me. If she was imagining what would happen next. I knew I was. I hated how much I wanted it. The next opportunity came 2 days later. My dad had a late meeting. She knocked on my door around 11. She didn't say anything, just looked at me. Her eyes asked the question. Mine gave the answer. This time was slower. Less chaotic. She took her time, like she wanted to memorize every part of me. It wasn't rushed or panicked. It was intimate. Intentional. And in that slowness, the guilt only got stronger. It mixed with the pleasure in a way that made it harder to separate the two. Afterward, she kissed my hand. Not out of affection but possession. Like she was claiming me in a quiet, invisible way. She whispered, "You still want to stop?" I didn't answer. We both knew I didn't. The next morning my dad was back. Watching him hug her, talk to her, laugh with her, it twisted something inside me. Not just guilt. Jealousy. I realized how deep I'd gotten. I wasn't just attracted to her. I wanted her to choose me. And that thought scared me more than anything. I tried creating distance. I left the house more often. Spent nights at a friend's place. Said I was job hunting, reconnecting with people. She didn't chase me, but she noticed. One afternoon she sent, "Are we done now?" I didn't know how to respond. So I didn't. That night, she walked into my room. She didn't ask permission. She just stood there and said, "If you want this to stop, you have to say it. Right now." I couldn't speak. And that was all she needed. It happened again. But this time, something was different. It wasn't just physical. She looked at me afterward and said, "I think I care about you." Not like a stepmom. Not like a friend. Like something else. And I couldn't pretend I didn't care back. I'd crossed too many lines to claim innocence. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I didn't fully recognize. Someone who wanted something he couldn't have but wouldn't let go of anyway. I knew we were heading towards something irreversible. But I didn't stop. I didn't want to, and neither did she.